you have to either go in the defense to protect your children, right? Or you have to be, ignore the issues and act like that this doesn't exist. But I can't believe that suddenly a lot of black males in the space of 40 years became suddenly criminals that you could just throw into jail in that space of time.
I'd like to try and get one really concise.
I'm just saying that. That's
just a second.
All.
I'd like to get a concise answer from both of you on what exactly do you fear for your sons? Just a concise, maybe a sentence or two, and then I'd like Ben and Monique to respond, so we can narrow it down.
Look. I was brought up in a household, and I was middle class. I didn't grow up in a poor household, and my parents were educated and so forth and so on. And I grew up being told that basically that you really have to be careful about white people, and you have to be careful about how you present yourself with police officers. You have to be careful about all these things. We had sober conversations in our house, because for us it was just like, this person or that person got hurt, or that person ended up in jail, and you don't want to be in that situation. So basically there was a lot of like this kind of sober talk, and I had to have this conversation with my own son and say, don't kid yourself. If a police officer comes, remember that they're seeing a black person. Just be aware of that.
Dr. Seacrest?
I recall looking at the video of the desperate mother who probably in her eyes was slapping her son to try to save her life, the desperation of that moment. And I had to reflect on what my grandparents, what my parents before her probably had to feel in that same type of desperation. You see, you've got to go into the history when you're talking about African Americans here inside of the United States. We've got to look at the stories of our grandparents having to teach, don't look a white person inside of their eyes, make certain that you look down. Those old lessons that were taught to children, and the importance of what took place if they ever were to disobey that rule. The consequences for us could cost our lives. And so I try to take myself back into those moments when, as a parent, you don't want to see your child forget what those rules are. You don't want to see your child put himself inside of harm's way. I look at that video and I can see a mother who's desperate, trying to fear of, if an officer catches you in this type of climate, he may give you a warning. That would be on a good day. But we also know the consequences of that could cost you his life. So I've seen the desperation of that. I know the historical significance of how our parents would try to make sure, don't mess up, don't break the rules, because there's thousands of written rules, and then for us, there's the unwritten rules.
Do you think the unwritten rules are the same now as they were in the time of your grandparents? Because you're saying
absolutely.
That really?
My son, let me tell you why. Absolutely. Absolutely. The unwritten rules, we have to make certain that we're teaching our children. I recall dropping off my son to college last fall, and as I'm going through, he's studying pre-med at Wazoo. Any parent would be proud. I'm still telling this bright and gifted kid, baby boy, if you get pulled over, make certain that you listen to the letter of whatever the officer's saying. I don't care how rude he's being. You say, yes, sir, the entire time. Baby boy, don't touch your cell phone. Before you reach for your registration, make certain you let the officer know what you're going to do before you remove your hands from the wheels. Those lessons come from our grandparents, but it's understanding.
Those aren't the same lessons as 80 years ago.
The
lessons of 80 years ago were significantly more strict than tell the cops before you reach for your I mean, if those are the same rules, then my parents told me, and I'm pretty white. You know, so it's, I mean, I'm not suggesting that young black men don't get a different look from a lot of cops. I'm not suggesting that at all. What I am suggesting is that the rules have changed pretty significantly, and if we're going to act like the cops treat young black men now the way that they did 50 years ago, that's just it's a slander on cops.
I believe that they do.
Really?
I believe that the police brutality the movement of the Black Lives Matter, that didn't just surface all of a sudden, where in the last few years that officers just suddenly started. This has been a history.
I can assure you Black Lives Matter and the hashtag are coming up very shortly. Let's hear really quickly from Monique about
Great,
parenting.
thank you.
Yeah.
So I think I have 4 sons and 2 daughters. My 4 sons are 26, 21, 21, and 13. One of my sons, Buddy, is 21 years old, and if he ever hears me talk about him, he'll just like die. But I remember very specifically, you know, him going through his teenage years, and I find out at 17 years old he has the AK-47 tattooed on his stomach. And I'm going, what the hell is going on here? And pretty soon he's gonna join a gang. And you know what I said to him? Well, you know what happens when you join a gang? You get jumped in. And he said, yeah. And I slapped him square in the face with my hand. Because I said, you want to get jumped in? I'm going to jump you in right now, okay? It's ridiculous for you to walk around with 2 parents that own a business acting like you want thug life in the middle of your stomach. So what do I fear for my son? I fear for my son that he will not learn the value of hard work, that it's not worth it to him to get $9 an hour minimum wage because he's going to get 15 now and decides to sell drugs instead for the quick dollar. That's what I worry about for my sons, that the streets will swallow him up. And I see that now with kids protesting for $15 an hour now. I started at $4.23 an hour as a busser. I now have a business with 4 walls and 60 employees. It didn't happen overnight. It happened for me cleaning toilets, cleaning up throw up, learning as much as I could and saying, if I want to earn more money, I need to get the next job. So what do I worry about for my son? I worry about his entire generation of iPads and iPhones, that they don't know the value of patience and hard work. They don't know the value of experiential equity because they get it right now. I'm going to go protest and get $15 tomorrow. No, the hell you're not. You're going to learn your job, you're going to build some equity, and you're going to give your boss a return on investment. So what do I worry about? That he won't ever get that.
Let me assure you as well, we'll be approaching the minimum wage coming up too.
Yeah, I'm sure we will.
David, I do have a quick comment. I do have a quick comment about the mother and the kind of media-wide worship for this mother who's in public slapping the living crap out of her kid.
With an open hand.
With an open hand. My question is not about that particular incident. My question is why her son is on the street in the first place throwing rocks at police. Because
you were never a teenager? You were never a teenager?
I was never a teenager who threw rocks at the cops.
Let me interrupt you both because I'm quite sure that this conversation will.
I'm sorry. I like
Charles.
I like a good teenager.
Charles, let me assure you that your answers to the following question will then head into Ben's direction here. And because I spend hours for these events preparing, I like to insert myself from time to time just to pretend I exist.
That's why they picked the tallest man in the room to moderate.
That's right. This is why everybody else is on that side of the room, and then there's me. So I wanted to get a short answer from each of you. I'm going to use my stopwatch because everybody seems to have a different definition of short. So in 30 seconds or less, we'll start with Monique and work our way down this way. I want to know this. In the aftermath of the as-yet unexplained death of Freddie Gray, Baltimore obviously suffered a great deal in riots. Some are calling the riots a cry for justice, something you get when you deny people a voice. Others say it's opportunistic criminality. You might say it's something else. What do you think these riots represent? 30 seconds or less.
I know that problems of the future are not best served. Did I do that? Sorry. Problems of the future are not best served by solutions of the past. So, Thurgood Marshall, who was chief counsel for the NAACP, grew up just 2 blocks from there. And you know what path he chose? Not rioting, not picketing, not stealing wheat thins from the CVS. He chose the path of legality to change the course of his people through Brown versus the Board of Education. So what do I think those riots are? I think they're depravity, I think they're thugs, and I think if you really want to make a difference, Thurgood Marshall, who grew up just 2 blocks from there, did such a thing, who was a contemporary of Martin Luther King.
Now I'd like to skip over to Dr. Seacrest.
I look at the Baltimore uprisings as more than just riots, right? I hate the idea when you say thugs and riots, right? White people riot as well. When y'all win Super Bowls 2 years in a row, y'all get off the hook. Don't make it seem like it's just Baltimore getting upset. So my 30-second answer is I feel the frustration of what's happening in the community. And I think it's a symptom. The uprisings are a symptom of a pressure that's been unaddressed for too long.
Ben?
I'm offended by the language of uprising applied to people who are breaking into other black people's stores and looting them. This is a lack of values. And people who are destroying private property, destroying cop cars, in an uprising against what exactly? Against the black police chief, against a mostly minority police force, against the black mayor, against the black president, against the black attorney general, against against a city council that is 9 of 15 are black and all 15 are elected Democrats. What is the uprising against? What is it seeking to achieve? I still don't see what exactly the riots are seeking to achieve. Bottom line is, this is all, it all could be boiled down to just act like a mensch. Act like a human being. Honestly, it's not useful to riot, it's not useful to break things, it's not useful to throw rocks at people. And the idea that we're supposed to sort of correlate your level of outrage.
I'm going to stick to the 30 seconds on
this.
The
last sentence. The last sentence.
Yeah.
The idea that we're supposed to correlate your level of outrage with a certain level of justification. In other words, the more outraged you are and the more angry you are, the more justified you must be, is absolute nonsense.
I personally don't care. It's a riot for me. What? Yeah, they robbed, they threw stones and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm not going to I don't like going into that argument, because you end up with avoiding again. You end up where Ben can just chop you down really quickly, right? Because you're like, everybody sort of forgets. I mean, yeah, they're rioting. Yeah, they're looting. What the hell is that? That is exactly what they're doing. You know, and I don't want to end up like arguing over what they're doing is rioting or not, because I end up stuck in that argument. I want to understand why that riot started. That's what I'm more interested in. You know what I mean? I want to know exactly why would anybody get there? Because that's another discussion and along the lines. I mean, you know, again, I want to just say this very quickly. I know it's got a few minutes. I'll just say this. Yeah.
You're also redefining,
so what?
You're also redefining 30 seconds.
So Michael Brown is 18 years old and he may have charged a police officer, right? Yeah. Maybe it was a bad decision. After all, he is, remember, 18 years old. I mean, everybody acts like 18-year-old make great decisions all through their bloody lives. I mean, I'm always stunned.
Charles, allow me to exercise my divine right of interruption.
A young black male.
Charles,
why can't a young black male
Charles,
be allowed to make a
job here? I'm trying. Everybody's got to play by the same rules here on this panel. So just like I'm interrupting Ben. That was a good minute and 30 seconds of the 30 seconds here.
Sorry, you said we work at our own time. I'm working African time.
I want to point something else.
I want to tell you, 30 seconds.
I want to point out something else, which is, do you know that the ladies know how to keep time? All right. Let me do a follow-up question. This one is directed at Ben and Monique, and we're going to move into income, and I'm sure we're going to revisit Baltimore and Ferguson here in a couple of minutes. But I wanted to start with this. I got an email from Pastor Wayne Perryman, and it was about a different topic, but he brought up a number of things that I wanted to share with you. According to Pew Research, the net worth of white families in 2013 was $141,000. For black families, it was $11,000, even less than the $19,000 it was in 2007. According to economist Edward Wolf of the University of New York, excluding vehicles and other durables, the median black family worth is just $1,700, while 40% of black families have zero or negative wealth. White family worth, in terms of financial worth, is 69 times more than that of black families. Given this disparity, how can you argue that racism is not a driving factor in income inequality?
Because it has nothing to do with race and everything to do with culture. And when you have a culture that doesn't, you know what? Explain to me. You explain to me why black kids aren't graduating high school. Explain that one to me. Explain to me why black kids are shooting each other in rates significantly higher than whites are shooting each other. Explain to me why 13% of the population is responsible for 50% of the murder. Explain to me why the number of black kids in prison, not for innocent reasons, not for walking down the street and getting pulled into a prison, is so high? Explain, if it has nothing to do with culture, explain to me why the single motherhood rate in the black community jumped from 20% to 70% in the same course of time that the civil rights movement has made such tremendous strides. Is America more racist now than it was in 1960? And if it is, please explain to me how that happened.
Anybody can jump in. It's an open mic there.
So I would need to ask, have any of you ever been on food stamps? Have any of you ever applied for welfare? I have, and I've been on WIC, Women, Infant, Children, and I'll tell you why there's such a disparity. As a single mother at 17 years old, as a Hispanic female, I was told by my Democratic-led city council of all the programs I could be on, but you can't own a car, and you can't have property, because if you do, you're cut off. So you know what I was encouraged to do? Get on as many of those programs as possible. We become dependent, suckling pigs of the government as minorities. And it's why I voted Democrat, because they're going to give me women, infant, children. I'm going to get food stamps until the day that I stood in line and my son wanted fruit snacks and I couldn't get them. You know why? My women, infant, children only covered kicks, cheese, and eggs. And you know what I said? If I want something different, I better make my own goddamn money. And I'm going to tell you something. In Baltimore, when you look at a city, these urban hubs, these urban cities like Baltimore, like Atlanta, like Dallas, they're all run by not just Democrats, liberal, progressive Democrats who love to get the vote by saying, we're going to take care of you. Let us take care of you. That is pandering. That's pandering to me. I can take care of myself if you give me the opportunity. Don't tell me that I can't own a car, because I will own a car. So why is there disparity? Because the day that you have a car that's over the value of $3,000, your kids get cut off a free lunch. That's the reason why there's disparity.
Let's make sure all language stays radio friendly.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. Gosh darn
now,
it.
Moments ago, both of you were about ready to jump out of your seats, and this is unusual for me because usually that means words will follow, but there was a pause. I want to give you this opportunity to
Well, Lent is
fire
over,
back.
so let me cross myself.
When we're talking about the wealth gap, I have so many responses. We'll just take the easy ones. I'll go for the low-hanging fruit, and we'll talk about some of the systemic barriers. What keeps people of color by race poor? What are some of the barriers systemically that are in place? Let's talk about something just recently, right? We all remember the housing foreclosure crisis, where we had a court that had found that banks were 3 times as likely to give a bad loan, right? The adjustable rate mortgages than a fixed home, and the cultural types of ways that black folks invest versus white folks, how we put our money investments inside of homes. So when those homes don't give us equity, when they don't become an asset for us, the destructive nature of what it means for our wealth. All of those things are simple to kind of look inside of a report we don't have to debate on. We're talking about the systemic measures that keep people poor. We're talking about things like the Homestead Act, where both black soldiers, white soldiers, both fought for their country valiantly, laid their lives on the line. Those who were able to get the GI Bill, those who were not able to get a GI Bill. Those types of systems that are created by the color of one's skin, who gets to take advantage of those systems and who gets left out and are marginalized. Those create the wealth gaps that we see. It's not a matter of just wanting to work hard. Well, then we'll take the home ownership. That was devastating. When you see a greater divide between black wealth and white wealth in this last decade, it was because of the barriers, the unfair lending practices by the banks. That's how come they lost on that lawsuit. Those are the types of things that create the biggest gaps in wealth disparities.
Do you really think there was collusion between all of the banks not to lend money to black people who are qualified to get the loans? Are banks in the business of racism?
Absolutely. Here's the reason why, and this is the reason why there were settlement checks. This is why the Washington State Attorney General's office is still handling those. Yes.
Please name the individual bankers who are racist.
Bank
so we
of
can all call them
America
out.
is known, and they lost their suit because they actually called people who looked like me, Latino women and men who walked inside, mud people.
The last time I saw a FICO credit score, I didn't see American, Hispanic, or Chinese next to it. I didn't. TransUnion, Expedia, or any of the 3 credit bureaus. There's a number that shows your credit worthiness. And my last name's Trudanowski. I'm sorry, my hair's straight and I'm not ethnic enough. But the last time I checked, my home loan was not measured against the color of my skin or how tan I am or not.
Then check your Attorney General's office and you will see that there's still settlement checks by those banks because of their unfair lending practices.
But you're saying that there would have to be, you understand there would have to be industry-wide collusion to make that happen. So you're suggesting that all the banks are Bank of America.
You know, white people don't know when they're jacked. And it's really something that you guys got to learn. When you're getting stiffed and jacked by the banks. And it's not a matter of like whether the banks are racist or not. It's whether they're going to make a good, whether they're going to fleece you or not. A lot of times, and this is in St. Louis, and this is in several neighborhoods, what they would do is they would actually raise the cost of the value of homes that white people were owned by threatening that blacks were coming in, right, and that your house would be devalued. No, don't ever, when you wonder like, oh, is this thing like, you know, this thing that the banks are doing, is it that the racists or not? No, wonder how are they going to fleece you, and they will. No, and everybody's got to realize when they will use anything to fleece you. And I'm not. To me, it's not an issue of like of.
Hello, everyone. Hey, I'm just stopping by to remind you that liberals are insane. Social justice warriors are becoming